question. Who in texts do you identify with? Think about your favorite ones. Who do you identify with? I mean, we're juniors, so we'll just ask. Great Gatsby. There you go. You got a novel with a few people in it. Who do you identify with? Notice who Prufrock identifies with. He identifies with the old fart in the play Hamlet, Polonius, the one who gets stabbed behind the curtains, trying to get out. I'm an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince. No doubt an easy tool, differential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence. Some have argued that this is actually T.S. Eliot. Full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. Never can quite relate to people well enough. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous. Notice the dash. Almost, at times. Did you notice that fool is capitalized? Prufrock looks at the play Hamlet and says, you know who I identify with? Not Hamlet. I identify with that stupid old man who's always talking words and they mean nothing. Remember the irony of all ironies? Polonius says to his boy Laertes, this above all, to thine own self be true, as it follows the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Always tell the truth, Polonius the great liar of the play. And then, another observation. I grow old. Do you see the ellipse? I grow old. Which begs a very interesting question. Let's jot it down in 3b. This is a personal question, but it's worth your thinking about. Question, when will you say out loud that you are old? Go ahead. Write down a date. Write down an age. For you, will it be 50? At 50, do you say, man, I'm old? Of course, the irony of the question is, you would have said at the age of 5 that a junior in high school was old. Agreed? See how that works? See how that works? He says it twice. Then he says, I know what I'll do. I'm going to make up my mind to do something. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Why is it that old people spend so much time thinking about what they're going to eat and what they're going to wear? Well, some have pointed out, what else is there? There ain't much else left. There ain't much else left that you have any control over. Or is there? In Four Quartets, the same poet, T.S. Eliot, will say, old men should be explorers. You got a different view on that count. Here, the only thing Prufrock cares about is what he's going to do when he walks along the beach. I know, I'll roll my pants up. Then the next question, wait. How do I wear my hair? That's thinning, and I got a bald spot back there. Shall I part my hair behind? In other words, I got to start covering my bald spot. We're back now to dare, but it's not do I dare disturb the universe. The question has been reduced to the most silly question. Do I dare to eat a peach? Why would he dare to eat a peach? Well, because of course when you're old, fruit of any kind can start to jack with your indigestion, right? And so maybe I shouldn't eat a peach, it will bother my tummy. In other words, we've gone from the serious, do I dare disturb the universe, to the silly kind of, maybe I'll eat a peach. That's what I'll do. That's my affirmation, I'll eat a peach. I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. We're back to the clothes again, right? And then an interesting line. I've heard the mermaids singing each to each. In other words, he says, I like to go for walks along the beach, and when I do, I can hear mermaids singing. We immediately, of course, will think about the fair Ophelia, who dies as a nymph, mermaid-like. Only here he says, I do not think they will sing to me. Now some have said this is the most pathetic line of the entire poem. He says, I now am aware that when I go to the room where women come and go talking of Michelangelo, there was a time when they used to actually want to talk to me. But now they talk about me. And they don't sing to me. I don't think that they will sing to me. Now, of course, this human voices that are going to wake us here in a little bit and we drown are already beginning to ask the question about the singing and who is doing the singing. Again, notice this is the first time that we get any sense of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Singing. But then he continues with mermaids. I've seen them, the mermaids, riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back when the wind blows the water white and black. Now, these are interesting and complicated lines, and Prufrock, or T.S. Eliot didn't give us a lot of insight here as to what exactly he was talking about. Many have obviously seen this as symbolic. The voices, the singing, the noise of modernity. Some people have said that that static sound is the classic word picture of what modernity is all about. The static, the noise, the sounds. The idea that the mermaids are referencing the power of technology and the ways in which the voice of mermaids beckoning to sailors to jump into the water and while they're being made love to, drown. We'll get to the drowning in a bit. And then all of a sudden we go from the personal pronoun I to we. We're back to the beginning of the poem. Let us go then, you and I. We have lingered. And of course, this malingering of earlier in the play, hanging out, is our phrase today. We've lingered in the chambers of the sea. We're back to this notion of the sea and the crabs. By sea girls, of course mermaids, wreathed with seaweed, red and brown. Now, a lot of people have pointed out that seaweed is that which is alive. It's growing. It's dynamic, right? As opposed to what? The dead? Maybe Prufrock? He says, we've lingered in the chambers of the sea till human voices wake us and we drown. Now, this is one of the reasons why this poem is not well loved by many readers. What is going on at the end of the poem? Drowning? It's as if somehow Prufrock is asleep, and he seems to be enjoying the idea of being asleep under the water, until human voices wake. But notice it's not human voices wake me and I drown, but rather human voices wake us and we drown. At the end of the poem, we are left with obviously the question of metaphor, aren't we? What exactly is it that kills us? Whoa, now there's an interesting question. When we study Wordsworth as seniors, we will hear a poem called "The World is Too Much With Us Laden Soon." What's wrong with the world? Getting and spending. We waste our powers. Little we see in nature that's ours. We've given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The idea is there's something pervasive about culture, modern culture, that eats away or corrodes our ability to be human, to be real. But notice here, our dreams are awakened and we drown when we have human voices. Some have argued that this is Prufrock being called back to the world that he has to live in. A world that's kind of silly and kind of pathetic and kind of depressing, where the only thing that matters is whether he gets to eat a peach or not. Some will read this poem, let's finish now by two observations. Some will read this poem as deeply depressing. In the end, Prufrock knows he has no chance. He has lived a crappy life. He should have been born a crab, and now he's just waiting to die. Maybe even he will walk out into the ocean and drown himself. It's kind of a depressing way to read the poem, isn't it? There's a second reading of the poem that tries to be a little bit more optimistic, and that in fact, the drowning that's being spoken of here is the drowning of all of that mundane life. Getting rid of it all and saying, no, I will not give up on the question. Do I dare disturb the universe? I do dare, and I will dare. How you read the poem is in large measure, of course, up to you, which is maybe one of the most remarkable things about a poem like this. It can be interpreted so many different ways. Let's do a quick annotation now and call it a day, shall we? Let's begin first of all at level 1. If you had to reduce the poem down to a single line, you would say it's a stupid poem about what? Well, some have said an old man asking questions about the life he's lived. Some have said an old man asking questions about the life he wants to live, right? At level 2A, themes and messages. Well, you could probably come up with one or two on your own, right? A message here, of course, can be you need to wake up and live the life you are supposed to live. A life of joy, a life of expectation, a life of adventure. Because if you don't, when you get to the end of your life, you're going to regret it. In other words, live a life so well that when you're done, you don't regret it. Or you'll be like one of those lonely men leaning out of a window, smoking a pipe, and that's all. Or wishing you were born a crab. Level 2B, well, of course, we've already pointed out this is a dramatic monologue. You have an individual speaker, we kind of assume that it's Prufrock, who is speaking, but to who? Well, who is the us? Is it Prufrock's alter ego? That is to say, to have a conversation with yourself, where you kind of set it up and you go, dude, what are you doing? Of course, all of us have done that at some point in our life. Or is there another person there? Is it a woman? Is it a lover? Is it a woman who keeps saying to him, you just don't understand me at all. You don't get me at all. Of course, Prufrock admits, I can't say exactly what I mean because I'm not sure exactly what I mean. Of course, there's all kinds of symbols, powerful symbols in this poem. Some have said that crab image is a powerful, powerful image, right? Or the idea of putting your arms inside of the coat while you're getting ready to leave the party, that is to say, as you get ready to die, and death starts laughing at you, and you realize my whole life has been a complete and total joke. Or as Macbeth will say it in that Tomorrow soliloquy in Macbeth Act 5, it's a tale life told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying, what's the classic last word? Nothing. At level 3, of course, we have to ask about how we relate to a poem like this. First of all, how do you relate to other titles? Well, obviously, we got a lot of titles that we relate to here that are specifically allusions from other titles. Dante we've mentioned, Hamlet we've mentioned, Macbeth we've mentioned. This is a good question, though, for you. What is your favorite movie about an old person who is going right to the end with all kinds of energy? We are familiar in the late 20th century with a number of titles, films, that kind of played the game of an old person who is not ready to go quietly into the night, as Dylan Thomas will say it, but rage against the dying of the light. In other words, I gotta figure out one more thing I do before I go. Finally, of course, at 3B, our own personal reflections and ability to relate to this. It is a fair question to ask. How will you know that you disturbed the universe? Have you disturbed the universe to this point? Now, of course, let's point out that disturbing the universe can be good as well as bad. I mean, many people have argued Adolf Hitler disturbed the universe and it was horrific, right? But if you take it from an optimistic perspective when you use the word disturb, in other words, at what point will you begin to live the life that is your life? This sounds a lot like the great American transcendentalist Emerson, right? Asking, like Thoreau, when will you begin to live a life worth living? Because life is not just breathing. There's got to be more to it than that. We're back to Tennyson and his Ulysses lines, as though to breathe were life. Life piled on life for all too little, and of one to me little remains. Of course, in the end, this is the final question. What advice would you give to Prufrock, if you could? Is he savable? Is he redeemable? Is there anything you would say to him? One junior once said, I would say to him, dude, get a life. Which is, of course, a strange thing to say because Prufrock has a life. It's just a really crappy life, isn't it? It's a life of teaspoons. It's a life of being pinned to a wall, to a bug collection. Well, I hope that we've given you something to think about, and I appreciate the opportunity. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Thank you.